Okay, so I will be responding to Stanley's claim that raising the minimum wage will increase poverty. His secondary claims are: one, employers will not be able to support as many workers if the minimum wage were to increase. Two, raising the minimum wage would increase the price of consumer goods. Three, teenagers and young adults will face increasingly harder times finding jobs. So in response to his first claim, first, Stanley claims that the loss of jobs will not only affect low-skilled workers. He also quotes the Congressional Budget Office stating that a projected 500,000 jobs will be lost. He provides kind of vague evidence in understanding if the 500,000 jobs are from the minimum wage jobs or from the total jobs in general. To clarify, minimum wage will affect the number of jobs available to lower skilled workers, but not as significant to jobs above minimum wage. So according to University of Washington, in a research done in 2017, monitoring the effects of raising the minimum wage across the United States, the study found that there was little change in employment in the 5 years after a minimum wage increase. The job losses below the minimum were balanced by job gains up to $5 above the new minimum. So for every 2 jobs lost under $19 an hour, 1 new job was created between $20 and $39. From this, we see that raising the minimum wage causes a wider gap of the jobs available to workers working for minimum wage, but does not necessarily decrease a significant number of jobs in the overall market, which includes skilled jobs. This lower job availability for minimum wage workers is what increases poverty. In response to a second claim, secondly, Stanley claims that raising the minimum wage would increase the price of consumer goods. He introduces an assumption by stating change will only work if we assume that each company and institution is willing to give up part of their earnings to continue to pay their workers and keep the same prices. Better reasoning would be to use specific evidence explaining why low-income groups are hit hardest rather than an assumption. So for example, according to James Scher, an economic researcher in the Heritage Foundation, a minimum wage increase raises fast food prices. It will hurt poor and middle class more than the wealthy. Since lower income families typically spend on cheaper food, the price changes affect them the most, therefore hitting them the hardest. In response to his third claim, Stanley claims teenagers and young adults will face increasingly harder times finding jobs. He quotes University of Chicago economics professor Casey Mulligan stating, after the minimum wage increase of 2009, the teen employment fell 8% within just 3 months of the change. He again provides a little bit of vague evidence in what the previous percentage would be after the change. So he leaves out important information such as what was the teen employment originally, and a more insightful statistic can be the following. According to a research analyst by JP Morgan Chase and Company, since 1995, the rate of seasonal teenage employment has declined by over a third, from around 55% to 34% in 2015. Due to the recession and increase in minimum wage, unemployment for teens are rising. So overall, Stanley's claim was supported by evidence that needed a little bit more information to highlight how raising the minimum wage will increase poverty. Thank you.
All right, well, you start off pretty clearly identifying what the main and secondary claims were, so that was fine. You get to the first point, you label that sounds good. You kind of criticize the CBO evidence as being a little generic, and then you present another statistic that sounds like there is some kind of change in employment that is more important later on. At first, I thought you were arguing that there's a trade-off between losing the lower level jobs and we gain higher level jobs. But then the evidence that you finish off with at that point, the transition information seems to suggest that all of that comes at the expense of people at the bottom of that level, which supports the advocate's position. And I thought, well, that's a little bit odd. And then I realized that that's exactly what you're going to do on the second and the third points also. Your response is not a refutation. It is, here's a better way that the advocate could have proven their point. That's like the defense attorney standing up and saying, well, why didn't you present the fingerprints of my client that were on the gun that was used? Here they are. Why didn't you do that? That's not a refutation. That's a critique of the argument, which says you didn't make a strong enough argument, and here's how you could have made it better, as opposed to a reason why their argument is problematic. You don't have to take the opposing position, but you certainly don't have to take the advocate's position and prove it better than they do. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. So that's a problem, especially on the second and the third points. All right, thank you.